Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, my fellow Chibis. Today I'm here to bring you an anime review on Shiki. A full series review to be exact. Now this video will contain spoilers, so I'm going to link in the description my first impressions I did to Shiki. I did about last week, and that kind of contains no spoilers in it. So if you want to see what the series is about and my first impressions of it, the link is in the description, because this full series review will contain spoilers. So Shiki, the series, I just finished it about an hour ago. I just finished the series, and I kind of still have raw thoughts I want to discuss, but mainly I just want to cover, the basics of Shiki, because I want to give my impressions of it. So Shiki is a 22-episode anime series that is based upon this village that is currently facing an epidemic, or vampires. Now, yes, it is a vampire series, and does it break the mold of vampire series? That is the big thing we have to wonder. Now, usually when people think of vampire series, they constantly think of the standard, vampires constantly eating away at people, killing them, and then, surviving and hiding and stuff like that. Well, when it comes to Shiki, the series is very traditional to the term vampires. It's not like those glowy-ass vampires in Twilight. When it comes to Shiki, it feels more traditional to even modern day vampire anime we usually get. Shiki is a series that takes in these old superstitions about vampires when they can't, enter a home, because vampires can't enter homes unless they're invited, or vampires are afflicted by curses, statues, and crosses, and that kind of makes it to where vampires will not come near the person. And so, the vampires in Shiki are very similar to the old vampires we normally used to get in the past, vampires that were affected by all sorts of crazy things. Now, does this make these vampires good? That's the big question we have to wonder about the series. So, when it comes to the anime of Shiki, I don't know if the manga equivalent to this, I think Shiki is based off the manga. I don't know if the anime has deviated and went an anime original path. I don't know how the pacing was compared to the manga, if it does have a manga or light novel. I don't know the real source, the original source of the series. I don't know how it is in comparison, so I don't know if there was development or anything skipped when it comes to the anime series of Shiki. So, I'm just letting you know right now. So, if there is something very different, I am unaware of it. I've only watched the anime series, the 22-episode anime series. So, the pacing is something I do want to mention. When it comes to Shiki, the pacing was, I guess, some of the issues when it came to Shiki. The pacing in some points of the series felt very slow, which I understand the slow pacing. It felt like it was trying to build up the tension of the series and the main issue that was going on throughout the entire anime. And the first half of the anime, around episodes 1 to 13, it was kind of slow pacing. It was just, set up for the ending of the series. That's kind of what the first half of Shiki was. And then the later half of the series, it was kind of finally kicking the pedal to the metal and having it to where the villagers are finally discovering that these people that came in the middle of the summer are actually the people that are causing all these strange deaths throughout the entire village. And so the second half of the series kind of goes into a action, gory, twisted fest of violence. Later episodes, the final 4 or 5 episodes of the series, it's mainly just nothing but violence, people dying, and just so much gore and death. And that right there, I know a lot are probably going to have some issues with it. I slightly had issues with it. It was interesting, so to say, but that is some of the issues when it comes to Shiki. Shiki is a good series, don't get me wrong, but it does have its share of problems. It does have some issues that I do need to address. So, the ending of the series usually makes or breaks an anime. It usually does, or a manga, or any form of literature gets broken by the way the ending is done, broken or makes the series. And when it comes to Shiki, the ending felt very, I guess, open or anticlimactic, or just, I guess, unfulfilling. That's what I can really say when it comes to Shiki as an anime series, because one of the characters that I really couldn't stand throughout watching the anime of Shiki was the monk, the head monk, or Murai, or whatever his name was. The head monk, he was one of the main central characters of the series. He didn't get a lot of screen time, but he did. He was one of the main characters. and he became a hypocritical bastard. At the end of the series, he was hypocritical, he killed someone, he killed one of his own, and when he ran off with the vampire princess queen, whatever, Sunako, he ran off with her at the end of the series, and it's an open book ending where you're like, okay, so they're still alive, most likely the entire events that happen throughout this entire series is going to eventually happen again. That's pretty much what the ending tells us, and it's kind of like the cycle that happened in this, series will eventually start up again, maybe not in the same town, but in another town way off in the future, and so that's what the ending implies to us as the viewer, and I really don't know how I feel about that, because like I said, I'm not a big fan of how the priest or the monk survived, because he was very hypocritical. His entire character was a lot of focus throughout the series, and trying to figure out his development, why he wanted to kill himself, and all sorts of stuff like that, but he turned out to be just a character that I couldn't stand at the end. Like, he was probably, out of all the characters throughout the entire anime watching of Shiki, I couldn't stand him the most. I really couldn't, especially his decision of how he kind of turned upon his entire village over this girl, Sunako, because she gave her sad story, like, I don't want to fucking die, I don't want to die, and I'm like, don't fall for this, because let me point out some things. About 5 or 6 episodes before the conclusion, we get to see Sunako just crying and getting all sad and stuff. Before that, we saw Sunako carrying out the orders of, you need to kill the doctor, you need to kill these people, you need to kill these people to make sure none of these issues continue to progress. And she was acting like a cold-hearted ass. She was. Sunako was. And then all of a sudden we get to the final episode and she turns around and starts becoming very, sad, like a little girl that's being brutalized and tortured and bullied. That's kind of what Sunako turned into at the final parts of the series, and I don't know how to feel about that, because I know what they were trying to imply. They were trying to imply that she doesn't realize, like, she never asked for this situation to be a vampire. She never asked for it, and she was still a girl at heart, a little girl at heart, but I don't know how I feel about that, because she is the final villain of the series, and it didn't really hit me that hard. Like, it didn't make it to where I really cared about her. The only thing I really cared about was just how brutal the series became towards the ending. It became very edgy, so to say. Like, the series became very edgy. It reminded me of the ending of Another. If you've ever watched Another, it's another horror anime series that's 12 episodes, and the ending, to some, and even myself included, became very questionable when it came to some of the deaths and the decisions when it came to the writing, and it just became way too edgy, and you're like, all this pointless death. And that's kind of what happens towards the end of the series of Shiki. You see all this death going on, and you can understand the human side of why there's just so much death, because they want to get their vengeance against what the Shiki or vampires have done to them throughout the series, killing their loved ones, killing their family, invading their town, destroying their town, stuff like that, and it's understandable, yes, but I didn't like how they try to imply that the humans were now bad, but when the vampires, his logic was flawed, because, now let's get all upset and sad, because the humans are attacking us now, and we should feel like the victims, when, in fact, we're the ones that caused all this, and we were throwing out death orders, we're making it to where the new people we brought back to life would kill their own family, and so, technically, I can't really agree with how the vampires felt like they were being victimized throughout the series, even though they had it coming, because in human nature, humans are going to retaliate. They're going to retaliate, because if you do something like what you did throughout the series, so you can't really blame the humans for when their entire town was being subjected to death. That's what was going on. Like, they were all going to die if they didn't do what they did. But that's where the main theme, I think, of the series was starting to try to explain to us. Like, the vampires in the beginning of the series let us know that after you kill someone, you become desensitized to that death, and you will learn to become a murderer where you can fight and hunt for your food. That's what the vampires were telling the newly risen vampires. And I felt like that moral, or what that was done right there, was to explain the ending conclusion of the series of how all these townspeople that were regular humans hunting down these vampires, they eventually became the exact same way as the vampires. They became desensitized to death. They started killing people, even people that just got bitten, and they weren't dead, and they had no possibilities of turning into a vampire until they were indeed, in fact, dead. And it kind of made it to where there was just so much pointless death going on, and they were becoming desensitized, and just how brutal humans can be when they're given a license to kill. That's kind of what the ending implies. You give humans the ability to kill, and they can get away with it, they're going to kill. well. That's what the ending lets us know, and that's what the vampires were doing too. They let us know that, oh, when you find out eventually after you kill your first person, you won't be punished or killed for it, and you can't, face laws or punishment for it, you will kill again. That's kind of what the vampires were trying to let us know at the beginning of the series, and that's kind of what happened at the end with the humans. They found out that they can get away with killing people. They could kill these people they hated that got resurrected, and they can get away with it because they were not people anymore. They were vampires. And so that's what I felt like the ending was also trying to imply, how the humans and the vampires are very similar in certain ways when it came to desensitization to the death or pointless death throughout the entire series. But does that make the series good? That is left up to the actual viewer to really decide. It depends on how you really take that, if you really enjoyed the series or not. Now, that pretty much covers, I guess, the plot, so to say. There is a couple things that really bugged me throughout the series when it came to these subspecies of vampires, or you can classify them as werewolves. That's kind of what the Shiki or vampires called in. These vampires that could walk out in the day, or daywalkers, that's a proper term to it. Daywalker vampires that could walk out in the daylight, and they kind of function like regular humans. They had a pulse, they can breathe, they were pretty much humans, but with vampiric abilities. And it was never explained through the journey of the anime. Now, like I said, I've never read the manga or original source series, so I don't know if it was explained in that or not. But in the anime, it was not explained if the vampires could feed off of these daywalkers. It was never explained if that could happen. Like, I'm guessing it's implied they could only feed off of humans, but still, it was never explained if the vampires could feed off the daywalkers, since they were like natural human beings that had a pulse and all sorts of stuff like that with blood that they could be fed off of and stop it to where there could be mindless killing of human beings. Now, when it came to that too, these daywalkers were very, very rare, and there was a total of 4 daywalkers that were told that were in this series. But the sad thing is the 4th daywalker was never introduced. Now, you can argue and say that the monk is one, or not to know, but we know for a fact they're not, because the 4 daywalkers were introduced before those 2 turned to vampires, or that's some really incredibly shady writing right there. But the thing was, the fourth person, okay, was never introduced, which is kind of disappointing. I guess it was trying to imply how rare the subspecies of vampires were, but that was kind of left open right there. It was just never explained who that person was, and it was just left in the open. Overall, though, a lot of death in this series. Like, almost every single character you cared about died. Like, the only character towards the end of the series that really survived that you most likely probably care about is the Doctor. And that's really the only one you could say that really survived. Megami died, and she was like one of the main characters since the beginning, but she kind of got crushed. And I mean, I could sympathize with what Megami said. I'm glad she died, I want to be honest. She became a very straight up brat, or selfish, when she turned to a vampire. She really did. Like, her entire attitude of wanting to torture her friend, watch her suffer, take out her family, and just watch her, scream in agony. I didn't like Megami after that. I'm like, what the fuck is this shit? Like, that's straight up bullshit. It is. So, I'm glad she died. Honestly, out of all the characters I'm glad that died, I'm glad Megami died. I really did. But I understand her viewpoint, the way she was reacting to the villagers. The way she died, damn. Probably one of the most impactful deaths in the series, definitely. Megami had probably the most impactful death in the series, besides... I guess besides getting to see the death or the resurrection of the Doctor's wife that was being tormented on episode 12 and 13. Oh my god. Like, okay, I just gotta talk a moment real quick about that. On episode 12 and 13, I have to say, one of the best episodes of the series. It was definitely the best episode. I forget the exact episode. It was episode 12 or 13. But it was the episode where the Doctor finally was at the end of his ropes, and he's pretty much given up all hope. And to figure out the weaknesses of the vampires, he decided to experiment on his wife. Yeah. His wife died, and he decided to keep her corpse around, since she got fed upon by vampires. He kept her corpse around, and eventually waited till she turned into a vampire. When she did, he started experimenting on her. He started cutting her, figuring out, the healing of vampires. He started figuring out how he could kill them, what they're weak to. He tried to put in all sorts of different drugs, morphine, all that type of stuff inside of his wife to see if she could die or be put to sleep in that manner, but she couldn't. So he continued to experiment, and eventually found out that they were affected by shrines and, holy objects or relics, and also a stake to the heart or through cutting off their head will kill them. So I like the anatomy when it came to that. It was like really interesting to see how he went that far, and that's the tipping point of his character. Out of all the characters throughout the entirety of Shiki, I felt like the Doctor had the most development. I really do. But that is very stretched to say, and that's where the main issue of Shiki lies, actually. The characters. I have to say, when it comes to the characters of Shiki, there's so many characters, and it's a bloated cast, a very bloated cast of characters, and you really can't get attached to a lot of characters, which is sad, because, like, one of the main characters throughout the series is the Doctor, the Monk, Megami you can argue about, and then Natsuno, and Natsuno had, like, one of the main focuses of the series. Like, the first half of the series, Natsuno was, like, the main character besides the Doctor, and Natsuno kind of became MIA throughout the rest of the series after, like, episode 12 or 13. It became MIA, and he didn't really have any purpose until the end of the series, and it kind of sucks, because he was, like, our main character throughout the first half, and he just kind of got casted aside, so I don't know how to feel about that. And then the Monk, I've already explained, hypocritical bastard. He should have fucking died. And then you also have to where Megami, she became a selfish brat, and just like, she was kind of MIA too throughout the series. And when the Doctor, he was kind of the main focus too, he really was, but he's, like I said, the only character that really got the most development. Really, he was like the only character. And the rest of the characters, that's like a dozen of like 20-something, maybe 20 other characters, they were just kind of there to be there. I mean, they progressed the plot and what was going on with the atmosphere of Shiki, but I don't feel like, you know, a lot of the characters were really that well developed. So there was a lot of underdeveloped characters when it came to Shiki, and that's kind of disappointing. It really is, but, not every anime can do that. Not every series can do that, but I don't know if the manga handled this differently, so I'm still up in the air about that. So besides the characters, the main theme when I talked about the survival of how desensitization to both sides and stuff like that, and the ending being kind of open booked and just like there. Overall, the series, yes, it does have its problems. It does seem like I mentioned a lot, but as a reviewer, I have to mention this. Even though it had its fair share of issues, it was enjoyable. See, I finished it rather quickly, and it was entertaining. Look, I'm already reviewing it when I started it, like, last week. I started it last week, and I've already finished it. 22 episodes. It was good. I mean, it was very enjoyable, so to say. It was entertaining, but if you start really looking in deep to what the series is about, you will notice issues. I will say that right now. If you start looking into some of the main plot threads and stuff, you'll start to see some things that really are just iffy. But if you can just sit back and enjoy a vampire series that actually takes back and uses traditional vampires and kind of shows you a darker side to vampire series, you'll definitely like it. I mean, it gave me Higurashi vibes. Now, it doesn't, personally to me, in my opinion, it doesn't hold up to Higurashi in terms of writing or characters, but it does give me Higurashi vibes. And if you do like, you know, small towns that are being terrorized by a threat or an epidemic or vampires, you're definitely gonna like Shiki, regardless of the ending or the characters. It was still very fun. Music, very eerie and creepy. Definitely one of the best moments of the series was the music. Like, the music definitely suited the entirety of the anime, and the music was fucking good. Art and animation, very different, as I said in my first impressions. It depends on your taste of art if you do like it, but I personally saw not much issues, so to say, to the art and animation, besides some usage of CGI throughout the series, or some derps, but it was nothing too bad. And that's about it. That's about it when it comes to Shiki. I mean, it was enjoyable, and what would I rate this, and would I recommend it? I don't know. I guess I would recommend, if you want a traditional vampire series, I would recommend that. If you're interested in a supernatural traditional vampire series, I would definitely recommend it to someone if they're looking for a vampire series. Now, what would I rate it? I'd say, overall, my personal opinion, I would give it a 7 out of 10. Flat 7 out of 10. I would. Even though it had its issues, it had entertainment. And at the end of the day, that's all I ask. Entertainment. 7 out of 10. That's my rating. What would you all rate Shiki? Would you rate it lower? Would you rate it higher? Let me know your honest thoughts. And if I'm wrong about something, let me know in the comments below. I mean, I love seeing different viewpoints and opinions about the series. So you all have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. Please be safe. Chibi out.